So what is Tower of Time? Well, Tower of Time claims to be a new take on the good old classic RPG. The story seems to take place in a future in the midst of an end of days type event. Much of what I've seen from it seems to fit the same RPG type mechanics, though with one notable difference. You've got your top-down isometric view, and a group of characters banding together adventuring through a dungeon crawl. However, one interesting standout feature is the ability to slow down time during combat. You don't outright pause the game, and it isn't turn-based. Instead, you hit a key and time slows to a crawl, allowing you to switch between the characters and direct them where to go and how to attack. And while you're doing that, your enemies are still slowly coming at you, so if you take too long deciding, you'll waste that advantage. After the first couple hours of the game, I've only glimpsed at the character skill trees for the first 3 characters, but thus far it seems each character will have a chance to progress 8 different skills with optional paths in each, and be able to activate 4 of those at any given time during combat. And some of those skills are what you might expect out of a game like this, but others are really neat in how they are activated or display on the screen, like the temporary earth wall that you can throw up to block off enemies in their ranged attack. So as far as my thoughts on gameplay, I found it a little redundant and kind of strange, the way they have you visit the same level at the beginning of the tower, first as a boy and then again right after a cutscene, only this time as an adult. Now when you return years later, the character you're playing has little to no memory of having been there before, and I would have thought this would work better if they had just left out the part of you playing as the boy, and they could still use the cutscene and flash images of the inside of the tower to accomplish the same thing, but give you a better feel for how the character would be seeing the tower all those years later, and it'd be a little bit less awkward or redundant of a player experience. I also didn't particularly care for how the game takes you from the main adventuring floor to what they call a tactical map during combat, and then throws waves of enemies at you. I would have preferred more your typical approach to RPGs, where you fight what you see on screen and where you see them, rather than loading me into a different area and at times finding myself surrounded by enemies coming at me from all sides. But this did feel kind of like a callback to some older, like old school RPGs that would do something similar once you got into combat. The other gripe I had about the game is that you can't rotate or move the camera outside of combat, and inside combat you can move the camera but still not rotate it. The game map doesn't quite match up with the angle of the layout on the screen, so while this is a very small thing, at times it made it a little bit confusing when trying to navigate the area. Even if the camera is going to be locked at a certain angle, I still appreciate being able to zoom in, out, and move and rotate the camera around at any time I'm exploring inside a game like this. And I just couldn't find any options to do that or controls that would allow me to do that. Now, from what I've seen thus far and read online, it appears that there is plenty of lore to discover in-game about the world and the story that you're playing through. The game itself has a really interesting vibe to it, as you're learning about the apocalyptic situation that you're currently in, while also getting to learn about what the world was once long ago before magic came into the world and how magic has affected it since. While I'm still early into the story of the game, it certainly appears that if the problems that might end this world are in some way tied to the appearance of magic and its possible abuse. It'll be interesting to see how the story develops, possibly even in such a way that magic can be used to save the world, or if it'll need to be abandoned entirely, else risk the end of civilization. So, in conclusion, I'll go over our rating. Here we break down our ratings into 5 categories, rate them on a 1 to 10 scale, with 5 serving as average, and then average those scores for a final overall rating. For design, I gave it an 8. The environments, the creatures, and the overall feel of the game look really good, and the background sounds, effects, and music are a wonderful combination. It could use with some additional camera controls, but it otherwise functions well. For the challenge, I also gave it an 8. The battles are fun and engaging. With the ability to adjust the difficulty, you should be able to find a middle ground to get both a challenging and enjoyable experience. I did struggle early on with a few of the encounters, but things got better once I found some additional characters to add to my party. For replay or longevity, I gave it a 7. As with many games like this, the fun for fans is often in playing through and trying out different character builds or skills, and scouring areas looking for missed secrets and lores, which, as I mentioned before, it looks like there will be plenty of. And for price, we rated this an 8. Tower of Time is still at the moment in early access, and bugs and changes should be expected, though thus far what I've seen is a pretty polished project. They list 25 plus hours of gameplay, and currently I'd say for $15, to me, I think that's well worth it, even if it is just for a single playthrough. That brings us to our average score of a 7.8 out of 10. Overall, this has been a fun game to look at. I'm looking forward to delving into it more. And if this is a type of game that you're interested in, if you enjoy RPGs, I definitely encourage you to go check it out. And until next time, this has been Draconusx with our look at Tower of Time. A key for Tower of Time was kindly provided by the developers, and the game was played on PC.